Test 1, 2, 1, 2.
Good evening. I call this October 10th meeting of the Morrisville Town Council to order. Thank you to those watching via live stream and those who are watching a recording of this meeting. On October 13th, a video of this meeting will be uploaded to www.morrisvillenc.gov/government. Sergeant LeCraft has been in law enforcement for 18 years, 10 with the town of Morrisville. He is assigned to Morrisville's Traffic Safety Unit and serves as the department liaison for the Public Safety Advisory Committee and Citizens Emergency Response Team. We appreciate him being with us tonight as our Sergeant-at-Arms. Tonight's invocation will be delivered by Pandit Mukundan Ji, a priest who has been with the Hindu Society of North Carolina for more than 5 years, performing religious duties in temple as well as in the community. He has a doctorate in temple architecture and over 15 years of Hindu religious pandit or priest experience. He's married and his wife's name is Jayatri, and he's here tonight to deliver the invocation.
Jai Shri Krishna, Radhe Radhe. Om Ganana Tva Ganapatigam Avamaheng Gaving Gavinam Vamashamastamam Jeshtarajam Brahmanam Brahmanaspada Anasunan Udibi Siddhasadanam Om Shri Mahaganapadaye Namo Namaha Ekadanthaya Vitmahe Vakradundaya Dhimahi Tanno Danti Prachodhayat. The Almighty, the Bhagavan, please shower us the blessings for all the people, all the creatures, those have been here in the universe. Please remove all the sins and all the obstacles by your glorious vision. Sarve bhavantu sukhina, sarve santu niramayaha, sarve bhadrani pashyantu, ma kaschid dukkhabhag bhaved. Om Dyauhu Shanti Rantarikshagum Shanti Prithvi Shanti Rapaha Shanti Oshadayaha Shanti Vanaspadayaha Shanti Vishve Devaya Shanti Brahmagum Shanti Shamha Shanti Riddhi Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. O Paramatma, the Almighty, please give us strength. Whatever the sins coming, we have to face it and we will remove it. So please give us strength and we will win in the unity form. Vasudhaiva Kutumbakam. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Please give strong health, wealth, nature, all the things as well as peace. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahano Gunaktu Saha Viryam Karavahavai Tejasvino Mahi Samastu Vidvishavadaihi. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om. Thank you, Radhe Krishna.
Thank you very much. If you are able, please stand as we recite the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Before we adopt tonight's agenda, it is Town Council policy to review and ensure there are no conflicts of interest or appearance of conflict of interest with any items on the agenda. Would anyone like to share anything at this time? Okay, I'd entertain a motion to adopt this evening's agenda.
So moved. Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Hearing none, that carries unanimously 7-0. We have 7 presentations tonight. Proclamations recognizing Fire Prevention Week, Crime Prevention Month, Domestic Violence Awareness Month, Community Planning Month, and Bullying Prevention Month, an NCDOT Spot 7 update, and a Wake County land cover analysis and tree canopy assessment. Councilmember Scroggins-Johnson will read the first proclamation, which will be received by Chief Lizinski and Fire Marshal Eldridge.
Great. So I'm going to read it from the dais here.
Thank you.
This is to recognize Fire Prevention Week. Whereas fire is a serious public safety concern both locally and nationally, and homes are the locations where people are at greatest risk from fire. And whereas the 2023 Fire Prevention Week theme is Cooking Safety Starts with You. Pay attention to fire prevention. This year's focus on cooking safety works to educate the public about simple but important steps they can take to help reduce the risk of fire when cooking at home, keeping themselves and those around them safe. And whereas, according to the National Fire Protection Association, cooking is the leading cause of home fires, with nearly half, or 49%, of all home fires involving cooking equipment. And whereas 2 of every 5 homes fires start in the kitchen, with 31% of those fires resulting from unattended cooking, and whereas more than half of reported non-fatal home cooking fire injuries occurred when the victims tried to fight the fire themselves, and whereas children under 5 face a higher risk of non-fire burns associated with cooking than being burned in a cooking fire. And whereas Morrisville residents should turn pot handles towards the back of the oven when always keep a lid nearby when cooking, keep a 3-foot kid-free zone around the stove and oven and other things that could get hot, watch what they heat and set a timer to remind them that they are cooking. And whereas Morrisville first responders are dedicated to reducing the occurrence of home fires and home fire injuries through prevention and protection education. And whereas the Morrisville community, when responsive to public education, measures will be better able to take personal steps to increase their safety from fire, especially in their homes. Now, therefore, the Town Council of the Town of Morrisville does hereby recognize October 8th through the 14th, 2023 as Fire Prevention Week and urges the community to support the many public safety activities and efforts of the Morrisville Fire and Rescue Department. Thank you. So I'm going to take this one. Yeah.
And we're very appreciative. Had a really great fire safety day this past weekend. Thank you, sir. Mayor Pro Tem Johnson will present the next proclamation, which will be received by Chief Acosta.
So this proclamation recognizes National Crime Prevention Month. Whereas the vitality of our town depends on how safe we keep our homes, neighborhoods, schools, workplaces, and communities, and whereas crime and fear of crime destroy our trust in others and in civic institutions, threatening the community's health, prosperity, and quality of life, and whereas people of all ages must be made aware of what they can do to prevent themselves, their families, neighbors, and coworkers from being harmed by crime, and whereas the personal injury, financial loss, and community deterioration resulting from crime are intolerable and require investment from the whole community. And whereas crime prevention initiatives must include self-protection and security, But they must go beyond these to promote collaborative efforts to make neighborhoods safer for all ages and to develop positive opportunities for young people. And whereas adults must invest time, resources, and policy support in effective prevention and intervention strategies for youth, and adults must make sure to engage teens in programs to drive crime from their communities. And whereas effective crime prevention programs succeed because of partnerships with law enforcement, other government agencies, civic groups, schools, faith communities, businesses, and individuals as they help to nurture communal responsibility and instill pride. Now, therefore, the Town Council of the Town of Morrisville does hereby recognize October 2023 as Crime Prevention Month and urges the community, government agencies, public and private institutions, and businesses to invest in the power of prevention and to work together to make Morrisville a safer, stronger, and more caring community. And Police Chief Acosta is going to accept this proclamation on behalf of our Morrisville Police Department. Oh, thank you. Thank you for everything you do. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Next, Councilmember Garamella will present the next proclamation, which will be received by Rhonda Rainey, Executive Director of Interact.
Yeah, this proclamation is recognizing October as a National Domestic Violence Awareness Month, whereas domestic violence is defined as the willful intimidation, physical assault, battery, sexual assault, and other abusive behavior as part of a systematic pattern of power and control perpetrated by one intimate partner against the other. It includes physical violence, sexual violence, psychological violence, and emotional abuse. And whereas in the United States, more than 10 million adults experience domestic violence annually, and whereas domestic violence is the single most source of injury to survivors, more common than automobile accidents, mugging, and rape by a stranger combined. And whereas domestic violence can affect anyone regardless of economic, racial, gender, educational, religious, and societal status. Domestic violence violates a person's privacy, dignity, security, and humanity through a pattern of abusive behavior intended to control and dominate other person. And whereas U.S. domestic violence hotlines receive around 20,000 calls daily from domestic violence victims, these victims need things like emergency shelter, housing, counseling, transportation, childcare, legal representation, and more. And whereas research shows that creating communities where people are connected, supportive, and care for one another can reduce incidents of domestic violence. And whereas we must remind domestic violence victims that they are not alone and urge victims and families to seek aid from National Domestic Violence Hotline 800-799-7233 or North Carolina Coalition Against Domestic Violence at 919-956-9124. Now, the Town Council of the Town of Morrisville does hereby recognize the month of October 2023 as National Domestic Violence Awareness Month and urges the community to become involved in the efforts to prevent and respond to domestic violence and show support to numerous organizations and individuals who provide critical advocacy, service, and assistance to victims.
Thank you. If Ms. Rainey would approach, Councilmember Garamella will present the proclamation to you.
Thank you for being here. Thank you.
And if you'd like to say a few words, yeah.
We appreciate the opportunity to greet you, members of the council, commission, clerks, staff, members of the community. I'm Rhonda Rainey, Executive Director of Interact. This is the organization that represents Wake County's comprehensive service provider for domestic violence and sexual assault. So not only is October very important to us, every single day of the week we serve families from all races, all economic status, educational positions, just everywhere, everyone that you can imagine. So there is a myth that domestic violence affects certain people in certain places at certain times. You would be surprised the number of people that we see and that we serve. People that are probably sitting in a meeting very near us, we would never know, have been victims of domestic violence. So we stand here ready to work and to serve and to assist. We appreciate so very much, particularly the support that this council has given us over the years and the relationship that we have with law enforcement. We represent, again, Wake County's only comprehensive service provider in our county, and our relationship with law enforcement becomes very, very, very important. So we take that partnership very seriously, and we really appreciate your support. We serve 7,000 people per year, and we also have a 24-hour, 7-day per week, 365-day per year domestic violence hotline. So our services are comprehensive. We serve children, individuals, families of all descriptions. So wherever you fit into that spectrum, we're here to support you. Thank you very much for your time and for this proclamation.
Thank you.
And I would like to thank Donna, because usually she reads it and she asked if I wanted to read. And usually I shy away from reading these ones, or any of them, but thanks, Donna.
Oh, you're welcome. Thank you.
Thank you. I will present the next proclamation, which will be received by the Planning Department. This is a proclamation recognizing October as Community Planning Month. Whereas change is constant and impacts all cities, towns, suburbs, counties, boroughs, townships, and rural areas, and community planning and planners can help manage this change in a way that provides better choices for how people live, work, and play in their communities. And whereas community planning provides an opportunity for all residents to be involved in making choices that determine the shared vision of their neighborhoods, and the full benefits of planning requires public officials and residents to understand, support, and demand excellence in planning and plan implementation. And whereas the month of October is designated as National Community Planning Month throughout the United States of America and its territories. And whereas the American Planning Association and its professional institute, the American Institute of Certified Planners, endorse National Community Planning Month as an opportunity to highlight the contributions that sound planning and plan implementation make to the quality of our neighborhoods and environment. And whereas the celebration of National Community Planning Month gives us the opportunity to publicly recognize the participation and dedication of the members of the Planning and Zoning Board and other community planners who have contributed their time and expertise to the improvement of the town of Morrisville. And whereas we recognize the many valuable contributions made by the professional community and regional planners of Morrisville, and extend our heartfelt thanks for the continued commitment to public service by these professionals. Now, therefore, the Town Council of the Town of Morrisville does hereby recognize the month of October 2023 as Community Planning Month in conjunction with the celebration of National Community Planning Month. And if the Planning Department and its members would like to come up, I'd appreciate it. At this time, Councilmember Rabati will present the next proclamation.
Proclamation recognizing October as Bullying Prevention Month. Excuse me. Whereas bullying is the physical, verbal, sexual, or emotional harm or intimidation intentionally directed at a person or group of people and occurs in neighborhoods, playgrounds, schools, and through technology. And whereas bullying is a pervasive issue that affects individuals of all ages, causing emotional distress, trauma, and long-term negative consequences on mental and emotional well-being. Individuals who experience bullying are at a higher risk of developing lasting physical, emotional, and learning difficulties that can persist throughout their lives. And whereas various researchers conclude that bullying is the most common form of violence, affecting millions of American children, adolescents, and adults annually, as almost 30% of the youth in the United States are estimated to be involved in bullying each year, either as a bully or as a victim. And whereas students subjected to persistent bullying frequently fear everyday activities like taking the bus, going to school, and participating in community events, children who observe bullying tend to feel less safe, more apprehensive, and intimidated. And whereas fostering safe and inclusive environments is essential in nurturing healthy communities where individuals can thrive academically, socially, and emotionally without fear of harassment or intimidation. And whereas educating the public about the detrimental effect of bullying, including cyberbullying, and promoting empathy, kindness, and respect are fundamental in preventing and addressing incidents of bullying. Now, therefore, the Town Council of the Town of Morrisville does hereby proclaim the month of October 2023 as Bullying Prevention Month and dedicates this month to serve as a reminder of our collective responsibility to create a culture of respect, empathy, and support, ensuring that every individual can live, learn, and interact in an environment free from fear and prejudice.
Thank you, and bless you. Danielle Kittredge, Principal Planner, will make the next presentation.
All right. Oh, that's up. Okay, thank you. All right, I think we're situated now. So I'll be giving a presentation on the NCDOT Strategic Transportation Prioritization 7, so Spot 7, also known as Prioritization 7 for the 7th cycle. So Spot 7, also known as P7, refers to the prioritization process that'll guide the development of the 2026 to 2035 statewide transportation improvement program, the STIP. The STIP identifies construction funding that's scheduled over a 10-year time period. Usually the first half of the STIP is what's called committed, where committed funding is for projects, and the second half are knowing kind of what the estimated funding would be and kind of the hopeful projects after that. So this is reviewed kind of on a 4-year cycle, but going back to a 2-year cycle. And then as a part of this prioritization process, as new projects are going to be entered into this cycle, at the local level, it is metropolitan planning organizations or rural planning organizations, as well as NCDOT division engineers that can submit projects into the prioritization cycle. And so I'll review a little bit about Campo's role in this and just be able to inform that part of that process as well. In terms of the timeline, the process has already started. So I was here back around the June-July timeframe. Campo did put out a call for projects for bike ped, transit, and aviation projects, and I'll cover which two we did submit for 2 greenway projects to go into that. And the candidate project list at this point has been developed, so I'll be going over the review of that list and what project affect Morrisville that could be going into the cycle for prioritization. I'll also review, I didn't touch on roadway projects, so how roadway projects get into the process as well. So what we're looking for is, in just I think next week is it, the Campo Executive Board will approve the candidate project list. They'll have to be entered into the system by the end of October. And then NCDOT will be going through, it's a data-driven process for scoring projects. That will be occurring pretty much over the next year, and we'll be seeing the first scores come out next spring. They do come out in different tiers of statewide, regional, and division level projects. And Campo will have the opportunity, as project scores are released at the regional and division level, to assign local points. And that local points account for things that the data-driven process can't. Maybe there's certain priorities for the region that they want to elevate, and so that process will be starting in next spring as project scores are then released. In terms of the overall project itself, the overall process for the STIP, looking at a draft STIP in early 2025 and then adoption by fall of 2025. So in terms of Campo's role, MPOs and RPOs across the state start their work by prioritizing projects in their jurisdiction to be submitted in the Spot 7 process. And for Campo, this included, I mentioned, they did a call for projects. They were non-roadway projects, and at the town, we did submit Sawmill Creek Greenway and Stirrup Iron Creek Greenway into that call for projects. In terms of the candidate roadway projects, those are derived from Campo's either the TIP, which is Transportation Improvement Program, or the Metropolitan Transportation Plan. So they are only able to submit projects that are in those plans, and it's how they come up with the roadway projects that then do go to the executive board as part of the full package. And then after NCDOT prioritization scoring, I mentioned there was the opportunity for Campo to assign local input points. This is quite the process in terms of where these points will go, how will they score, and ultimately the Campo Executive Board will approve how those points are assigned to projects. So in terms of project submittal and what is going into the Spot 7 process, in the current STIP, which is the 2024 to 2033, there are projects in the second half that are uncommitted with funding, so those will all go through the rescoring process and be reprioritized. I'll touch on the next slide of what those are for Morrisville. And then Campo has the opportunity to submit 46 projects in each of the modes that are listed on the screen, which is highway, ferry, rail, public transportation, bicycle and pedestrian, and aviation. And then Campo will work closely with the NCDOT division offices. They have an opportunity to submit projects as well, so making sure that they're not submitting the same projects, or maybe Campo's run out of a certain number of allotment of projects and the division office can pick that up. So they do work very closely on the projects that get submitted. In terms of Morrisville, what we're looking at in the current STIP and what will go into the next prioritization process, we do have 2 committed projects in the 2024 to 2033 STIP. One is the Aviation Parkway widening, so that will not get reprioritized. It has committed funding. There's also this Morrisville ITS signal system project. I think I've mentioned in a previous presentation, it is very loosely defined at what that is right now, but there is some committed funding for that project as well. And then in terms of what's in the current STIP that's uncommitted that will go into reprioritization is the NC 147 extension. It's 885 now. That one was a project swap, so it will be rescored and reprioritized, as well as rapid bus transit service from Morrisville to Cary. It was a regional project, and it does not have committed funding, so it will be rescored. In terms of new projects, this is going to be a high level in attachment. Attachment 1 to the package is the full list of all the projects that are considered candidate projects by Campo. The ones affecting Morrisville, touching Morrisville within the town limits, is the Triangle Bikeway project, Sawmill Creek Greenway, Stirrup Iron Creek Greenway. With rail projects, there's construction of a second track that would go through Morrisville, as well as various passenger rail upgrades. In terms of transit projects, Campo looked at, there are many scenarios. They pretty much picked every scenario you could have for rapid bus and commuter rail or passenger rail to see how they would score in the scoring process. Some projects, some different combinations may score better than others. So there is kind of an overwhelming list of those options, but essentially rapid bus opportunities, commuter and passenger rail. There's also additional service for the Go Triangle Route 310. For roadway projects, there's 3 to touch on. The first 2 are both the widening of NC 54. So the first one is a 4-laning of NC 54 from Perimeter Park Drive to Weston Parkway. The next one is 6-laning of NC 54 from Cary Parkway to Maynard Road. Only a piece of that would be within Morrisville. Most of that is in Cary. And so I did add here as well, NCDOT has been in contact with staff about these projects regarding some express designs. This is to help inform feasibility and cost estimates so that there's a cost to go with these projects, because that is an important part of the scoring and figuring out how, if a project costs a lot, something else has got to give. So there's part of that cost estimate that goes along with that. Should the project receive funding, though, it's important to note that this will still have to go through a formal design process. Local input, public input, the same thing that happens for other projects. We'll see, where the projects get scored ultimately, but just as a reminder too, I included in here in 2016, there was also a study that was done called NC 54 and more corridor feasibility study, and did look at the road widening of 54 in these areas. And then the last project to mention is Airport Boulevard and NC 54 intersection improvements. So we've also been contacted by NCDOT about an express design for this. And just to mention, this is the area in which we were looking at a flyover of the railroad tracks, and this itself is not a flyover. NCDOT had, back in spot 6, so 2018, 2019, had identified the need for intersection improvements here based on trip generation capacity issues at this location. This project was ultimately not submitted because spot 6 was canceled. And so this has been on their list to look at. We've had some conversations with them. The scope is not fully designed for this. It's not clear if it's actually going to go forward, because one of the things that was told as part of the process too, the opening of McCrimmon Parkway has sort of changed the dynamic of that portion of the roadway, and maybe the need for the sort of higher level kind of intersection improvement there. So, but I did want to mention that this is one that's also being considered, and it was not being considered as like that phase 2 of Airport Boulevard or a flyover was not an original scope on that one. So we'll have some more information hopefully by the end of the month as well too, to know if that project is deemed needed by NCDOT and going to be submitted. In terms of the Spot 7 process and what they call all the buckets of funding, there are the 3 main categories of statewide mobility, regional impact, and division needs. So statewide mobility projects are scored first, and these buckets show the percentage breakdown of the total, how the total amount of funding that's allocated. In the regional impact, we are in, and I'll show in the next slide too, the region and the division that Morrisville is located in, and the estimated amounts of funding in each of those buckets. But on the regional level, the amount that's given to the different regions is by population. When you get to the division level, the amount of money is divided equally among all the divisions. And so this does, in terms of a growing Wake County and Durham County, that's both in Division 5. There's also a lot of concern about the equal share, and it does spend down the needs in growing areas compared to areas that may not be growing as much. There's a lot of concern in terms of how that funding can best be used when you sort of have a limited capacity. And all of this funding distribution is put into the state, make sure I get it correct on here. I have the STI legislation, but it is the State Transportation Investment Law. So it is defined by legislation how these buckets are divided. And I will mention on division needs as well, that's where your bike ped projects and some other transportation projects get funded as well. So in terms of the preliminary budget for areas that are either included fully or partially in CAMPO, They're listed on the slide here. So Campo does go into parts or all of some of these divisions and regions. And Morrisville is located in Region C, Division 5. At the regional level, again, this is based on population. So there's about $1.3 billion for the region for transportation projects. But at the division level, there's only about $16 million. So that's multi-year. So we are going to be looking at likely not many new projects that are getting funded at the division level, and those include things like the hopeful greenways and stuff that we had also submitted. So it's an important point to make. There's a lot of projects in the pipeline as well that uses up some of the funding, but looking that there's going to be very little new projects funded at the division level. In terms of next steps, staff will be continuing to work with Campo as the project scores come out to better understand those, participating in the Spot 7 subcommittee and the technical coordinating committee. We'll also be looking for opportunities for Campo to assign allocated local input points to projects, and we'll be assessing that once the project scores come out. And then the Campo Executive Board, as mentioned before, will ultimately approve how those local input points are applied to projects. So with that, I'll ask if there's any questions on this process or projects that I can answer.
Glancing over, I'm not sure who is first, Councilmember Garamella or Councilmember Rowe. Councilmember Garamella, please.
My question is more about the Airport Boulevard, and listening to what you were talking about, that it may phase out. I think the whole purpose of having the Airport Boulevard was the flyover, and we invested, the 2 cents, close to $2-3 million on it. But I'm not getting a good vibe that that project might go forward or not. And you said, especially the Mackerman has changed the dynamics of one more flyover around it. From your point of view, I want it to be transparent and clear. You think it's any value to continue with Airport Boulevard if the whole project is not even getting picked up from the NCDOT, because that's what their promise was. You build this piece and we will do that, and we had good faith, we did that. And we spent our bond money also into it, and also our hard saved money over several years that we put towards that. So I just wanted to reiterate, where does it go from here?
Yeah, and I think, NCDOT is making a lot of improvements at I-40 and Airport Boulevard with the diverging diamond. You'll see different traffic impacts. We've also got a growing McCrimmon corridor, so traffic is going to change and to increase. The particular intersection project I mentioned with that one was more of, I don't call it a quick fix project, but we identified a need in the 2018 to do that. But one of the things that we'll also need to be looking at too, as Campo starts their next process for updating their MTP, the Metropolitan Transportation Plan, is having a closer look as well at, is that a regional project? And there's a lot of balance too of the funding sources. We know in the last STIP that was adopted that there was no new projects added. They were just simply trying to fund existing projects that are in the pipeline. And so I don't think it's out of the question in terms of, especially once the next section is put in, but where it fits, kind of in the overall scope of projects, I'm not exactly sure, and it may also depend too. I know we've got NC 54, if that widening project happens as well, how does that dynamic change and where is that need? We've got also other planning in the area for maybe TOD. And so you have a lot of different dynamics that are happening, and it's hard to know or maybe predict well into the future that need and that connection, and maybe that connection that goes out to West Cary may have more of a need as well too.
I think point well taken, but at the same time, should we seize all the work on Airport Boulevard? Because if we are looking at all the dynamics around it and things could change, then these are precious tax dollars. We could use it somewhere else where it's better buck for the money, where we can match with DOT. So that was the whole process of why we put all these millions of dollars towards it. So I don't know. We'll wait for the end of the month and see. Let us know, because I feel this may just get bumped down, and we are doing half project, not the whole that we are getting. That's all.
Councilmember Rao, followed by Councilmember Fender.
In the last spot program over the last few years, we did pretty well with how much approved construction funding that came in, right? I mean, I think it was a couple $100 million that came in that was approved, but is that correct?
Yes, I mean, we have the McCrimmon Parkway widening as well as a portion of NC 54 widening. So those have been kind of in the pipeline for a little while. And we've had Aviation Parkway committed.
But I think, I'm just speaking, I mean, I think that's the problem, is that it's great that these things are all being approved, and I don't want to go project by project, but, we've heard from a lot of our residents about, we still see, our town's done a lot of our own initiatives and should really be commended, all of the council, previous councils and staff, for the McCrimmon bypass, which is, which we did with collaboratively, Morrisville Carpenter Road, but we've done a lot of other projects on our taxpayer dime, right? But the state is so behind in funding that I'm just concerned that when I see like a date 2028 for Aviation Parkway, we can just assume that it's not going to be that date, and so I guess I'm just expressing a concern of that. I know that it's a data-driven process, but the longer we wait, the more traffic we see and things like that. So I just don't know what the option is. If we have representatives on Campo, do we all need to work with the different local government municipalities to come together? Do we need to bring them out here and show them, like, this is, not only from residents, but also an economic development perspective, because a lot of the growth we're getting is on this side of the county. So I'm just expressing concerns about, how we address that challenge.
Yeah, and I do think it is a challenge overall. And although I've went over a lot of great potential projects as well, I mean, the amount of new projects that actually get funded is probably going to be very limited, even in the scope of everything that gets submitted. And so that is just another overall challenge to this. There are projects that we'll be watching. They're trying to focus on, if there are projects that are, maybe the highest priority for the town. But, as a region, the region is growing in multiple municipalities with limited amount of money.
Thank you.
Councilmember Fender, followed by myself, please.
Thank you, Danielle. I have a couple questions. First, what is meant by express design?
It's just kind of a conceptual design so that they can look at, a layout or a location, or just understanding, is it, 4 lanes, 6 lanes, those types of things, maybe number of traffic signals or potentially with that. So it's very schematic.
Okay. Why do you think they asked for the express design for NC 54 from Cary Parkway to Maynard rather than the perimeter part to Weston?
Oh, and that might have been my, that bullet point was meant to reflect both of them. So it's for both NC 54 sections.
That's good to know. And then going back to the airport boulevard and NC 54 intersection, I'm wondering if the DOT talking about making at-grade improvements there necessarily means the flyover is out of the possibilities. I mean, where did the idea of the flyover come from? Wasn't that like phase 2 or 3 with the DOT?
It's in our comprehensive transportation plan in terms of the flyover. And so I think the intersection improvements that I mentioned are not a replacement to a flyover. It was an immediate concern, or more of an immediate issue in 2018 that was identified more so just based on numbers and not looked at as a replacement to that. But it is part of the town's comprehensive transportation plan. And I don't know that there was any specific, and this might be something, kind of dig back on. It's a little before me in terms of if there was any other types of steps or processes that were kind of agreed to beyond that.
I'd be curious to know if the NCDOT is aware of the portion of the plan that we were expecting that a flyover would go there.
They are aware of a flyover.
Okay.
Yes, because they also drew up a conceptual plan when we were looking at phase 1.
Okay.
And so they are aware of it.
All right. So this plan of the intersection improvements doesn't necessarily eliminate the future project of a flyover in that location.
That is correct.
Okay. So what can we do, if anything, to make the widening of 54 from Perimeter Park to Weston a high priority?
So what we'll have to do is wait till the scores come out. There, and it's going to be a submitted project. Wait for the scores to come out, and then there may be conversations with Campo and how they're allocating different points or what the proposal is for allocating local points. They're very aware of the town's interest and high priority on 54, but that'll be through Campo.
Okay, so this has been submitted.
By the end of the month, the candidate project list, they're going to try to submit what they can, as much as they can off that candidate project list and get those submitted on that.
Okay. All right, thank you. That's good to know.
Okay, and I'll circle back once more on the flyover, because it sounds like they're aware of it, but have they rolled RCTP into the MTP? Is our flyover part of the MTP?
So right now, there's like the MTP, which is Metropolitan Transportation Plan, and Comprehensive Transportation Plan with Campo. It is identified as a local project currently, and so as a local project, those come out of division dollars, so they're very slim right now. So I think some conversations in terms of as the MTP is updated as well in, regional project and as pieces are and the work that NCDOT is doing further up on Airport Boulevard and how roadways get classified will be an important part in all of that as well.
Okay,
so it is shown as a line on one of their maps.
Okay, so would it benefit us to talk to Cary about helping them advocate on our behalf to make that a regional project to get to West Cary, I guess, so it becomes regional instead of division?
I'd have to talk to figure out if that's an opportunity, but it's certainly something we can ask and how it works as a regional project and what that classification entails for something to be elevated to that, but certainly something I can ask about.
Okay, and just 2 points about Campo in general. They're really big on their charts, and they have some bar charts which show that there's like $1 billion of division need and less than $100 million of funding available. So it's really competitive and really hard, but Chris Lucasina and the staff over there do a really great job of allocating the points to get as many projects above the red line as possible. So we have a really good advocacy team there, and you're on the TCC, so you're really down in the weeds making things happen for us. So I just want to thank you so much for that, and that Campo is working for us. And 54 is a really important thing, and I'd like to jump that up. And just to note that it's broken into essentially 3 pieces right now because it was too big a chunk to really score well. So by breaking in smaller pieces, we're already doing down to perimeter from the Durham line. So we're getting there in pieces. And it's frustrating, I know, for everyone that it's taking so long. But that's kind of how roadway projects are. So we're going to keep on plugging away and trying to move us forward. Does anyone else on this side have some comments? Okay, Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
So thank you, Danielle, for the update. I really appreciate that. And thank you for the projects we did submit that are equally as important as the ones that affect NC 54. So I'm going to focus there too for a minute. So the idea of the Airport Boulevard NC 54 intersection being critically important for Cary, I would say the widening at 54 from Perimeter Park to Weston is critically important for Cary too. I mean, their residents are the ones that are driving up and down that road. If it was only town, and you know this, but if it's only town of Morrisville residents, we'd get up and down that road a whole lot quicker. But they double the traffic. So I would say we need to emphasize how important this is, and it's not just the Cary Parkway to Maynard section. I realize most of that is in the town of Cary, but that does no good if you don't have the other piece in the middle. So we need to figure out how to emphasize that as a council and staff to the town of Cary, that this is important for them as well. And then, so just my 2 cents on that. And then the Airport Boulevard and NC 54 intersection improvement. So just so I understand, this project, when you say it's going to be an at-grade solution only, is it with the extension of Airport Boulevard to the west?
No,
it's just the intersection.
Just the intersection improvements to help traffic flow, if there's backups or different things, and to make traffic flow better through that intersection.
Okay, okay, thank you for that, because for a minute I thought, well, does that mean there's no way?
Yeah, not another at-grade across the railroad
I was going to say,
track.
there's no way.
It is, yes, intersection.
This would be dead on arrival. So, okay, and that intersection does need improvement. I would agree with that. But there were some, maybe not written commitments, but there was certainly before your time discussion of the fact that if we committed to the Airport Boulevard extension piece that we're working on now, that would be incredibly helpful to the next piece, which would be the flyover. So that was, again, not sure it's written down anywhere, but that was said, that was emphasized, and that kind of mattered. And so I don't want to lose sight of that as we're moving forward through all these discussions. But again, understand the limited dollar amounts, and Joey Hopkins, I'm putting my faith in him that he does a good job for us. So we'll see what happens. Thank you.
Yeah, it's nice that Joey Hopkins used to be our division guy, our region guy, and now he's the Department of Transportation Secretary. So he's very aware of our needs. I don't see anyone else had any questions. This has been a really helpful update. And as you mentioned, Campo will be looking at this later this month, and you'll keep us apprised of what's going on.
Yes, I'm sure I'll be back when scores start coming out next spring, and having some discussions as well and updates as we see this process evolve.
Yeah, and we engendered some goodwill by allowing a trade to happen last time too, so we're doing everything right.
Yep.
Okay, thank you very much. Okay, at this time we'll move on to the next item. Kimberly Conley, our sustainability coordinator, will make the final presentation of the evening, and then we'll have a break, but no pressure.
None taken, thank you. Good evening, Council. I hope you're doing well this evening. Thank you for having me. So tonight, what I'd like to speak to you about is the Wake County study. I'm going to provide you an update, a summary on the Wake County. It's the land cover analysis and tree canopy assessment, as the mayor mentioned at the beginning of the meeting. It was released in early September. I wanted to thank you for your patience in allowing us to staff to come and present this to you. We wanted time to kind of provide some context for some of the information that was received. We also wanted to receive information from Davie Resource Group. We had done a follow-up or a subsequent study using 2022 imagery that was just most recently available. So with that, we really wanted to make sure that we were coming to you with as much information as we could based on the about 1 month's worth of time that we've had access to these this study details. So, too many mouses up here. got it. Thank you. So the study origin, the study was conducted by the Davie Resource Group. The project team is Wake County, and that was the Planning, Environmental Services, and Facilities Design and Construction Department. Municipal partners as part of the project team were Cary, ourselves, and Raleigh. We do have representation here tonight from Wake County. We have Bill Schroyer. We also have Joe Joyner from Davie Resource Group. So they're able to answer some questions, technical questions that I might not be able to answer for you. And then, of course, there were representatives from the 12 municipalities that also submitted information, data, maps, you name it. This has been a very comprehensive process. So what was the scope for the Wake County study? To produce a robust, measurable land cover data set. They wanted to quantify the reality of tree change within Wake County from 2010 to 2020. I've highlighted that just because that is the Wake County study. The subsequent study that we did with Davie Resource Group uses 2022 data. So I just wanted to make mention of that. Also really important to note is that as of this date, Morrisville is the only municipality that has done a follow-up study with Davie Resource Group based on the Wake County data, and that's due to we could see the results that were coming as a part of this study, and we wanted to be able to get as much information as possible, so we coordinated that follow-up study. Bullet 3, identify priority planting areas to support environmental, social, and health benefits. That was important as part of the scope, as was providing actionable data and deliverables for all municipalities within Wake County. So the primary benefits here are environmental, mental, and emotional, and we looked at those through a diversity, equity, and inclusion lens. So I'm going to go through and give you just some summary information for both the land cover and the tree canopy assessment. So we used aerial imagery, the National Agriculture Imagery Program, NAEP as it's commonly referred to. For the Wake County study, it was 2010 and 2020. We looked at impervious surface, tree canopy, water bodies, and barren land areas. The study also differentiated forest health and measured tree canopy. And the tree cover benefits were, and possible health-related impacts were looked at using a scoring system to identify urban heat island, stormwater mitigation, and social equity. So those three things are key as we go through the study. Those became our vulnerability assessment. So you'll hear me use that term a little bit later in the presentation. The geographies that were analyzed included the planning jurisdiction, the extraterritorial jurisdiction, or the ETJ. Census boundaries were used, block groups, watersheds, parks and open space. Specific to Morrisville, I wanted to make note that the Church Street Park and Cedar Fork District Park, while we maintain those through our fabulous public works folks, we weren't really able to claim credit for those within our tree canopy. So looking at, and I'm sure you've all seen this, so this is the land cover table looking at all of the different municipalities, right? The 12 municipalities, acres, tree canopy, impervious surface, so on and so forth. I have identified Morrisville in orange. We are at 6,304 acres, and our tree canopy is 33.7%. I'm sure that you can see that we are the lowest among the municipalities, and that's part of the reason we're here tonight, right, is we're going to talk about some ways to improve this and make it better. Garner was at the top with 56%, 56.3 rather. So I'd like to provide you, I'm going to provide you some context for those numbers in just a minute. Just bear with me as I get through some of the tree canopy portion. Looking at canopy type, it's really important to understand the difference between deciduous and coniferous. Wake County has about 54% total, 70% deciduous, almost 30% coniferous. Our stats are about the same, deciduous 66%, coniferous 33%. Just wanted to identify or clarify rather that the difference, right? Deciduous lose their leaves in the fall and winter, where coniferous hold on to they're usually pine and softwood, and they hold on to their needles all year round. It is a benefit to have more deciduous than coniferous trees because they hold more carbon. They sequester more carbon. So in looking at canopy health, the health of our trees, greater than 57% is actually in the good or very good category. So this is something that I think that we should pat ourselves on the back for. We'll talk about where those poor and critical areas are in a second, but I just wanted to identify that canopy health for you all. That poor canopy health is oftentimes near impervious surfaces. So sidewalks, parking lots. We have a fair amount of impervious surface in Morrisville, so you're going to see more poor and critical near those areas. In looking at the Wake County historical change from 2010 to 2020, you're looking at about an absolute change of 2% or a net loss of about 11,000 canopy acres. And sorry, the coloring is basically the percent change. So you have green is greater than 5%, that's a gain, and then from there everything else is a loss, with orange being greater than 10% loss. I thought it was important to differentiate our ETJ percentage as compared to our peers. So the tree canopy in the ETJ is 53.6% as compared to our corporate limits, which is 31.4%. And then if you come down here and look at our peers, you'll see that I've highlighted Morrisville at 10%. Our percentage is just much smaller than some of our peers. These are some of the things that just differentiate us from our peer municipalities that I wanted to point out to you. Fuquay-Varina, obviously at the highest with 60% in the ETJ. And why is that relevant? Well, because it's typically not developed yet. So Town of Morrisville historical canopy change, you'll see in 2010 we were at 43%, we're now at 33%. That's an absolute change of 9.9% to the negative. You'll see a lot of orange on this map. I know it's a little shocking, but I think it's important to note that as with many of our counterparts in Wake County, in Western Wake County especially, we're all going through this growth, right, and development, and we're trying to find places for our folks to live, work, and play. And so development definitely is something that we're all sort of feeling the disadvantages from. So on a positive note, we had some tree gain. This is based on the 2022 data that we received from Davie Resource Group. So at that 33%, we actually went up 2.77% to bring us to 36.45. And so we did our best with this screenshot just to give you an idea. You have, put my glasses on here, I know that's really tiny. You have Carrington Mill Road over here. You have 540 obviously here, and Chapel Hill Road. So just to give you an idea of where we've seen some of that increase. It takes time for trees to grow, right? A lot of the trees that we think may have been just planted when the original 2020 NAEP imagery was done, were probably a little too young, a little too small to be picked up by the next iteration of the imagery in 2022. So we think that the trees are only going to produce more canopy, right, as they get older. So that's part of that, that increase. So just to talk a little bit about canopy benefits, so the study quantified the canopy benefits at when you're talking about things like carbon storage and carbon sequestration and the value. Those things have value, right? Financial, monetary value. This is in addition to things like increased property value, in addition to things like shade, where those are harder to quantify, but you can quantify carbon reduction. So we're looking at about a $22 million value to Morrisville based on our trees. The next slide shows the per capita value. So we're looking at accumulated carbon, and then we're also looking at the annual removal of air pollution, stormwater capture, because of course trees support our stormwater, and then the absorption of carbon just by photosynthesis. So you're looking at a per capita benefit of about $645 per resident. So that's only looking at our planning jurisdiction, and that equates to about a $19 million benefit when we're talking about trees. So something else that differentiates us that is probably not very newsworthy for council, but our residential versus commercial segmentation. Morrisville, again, is here in the gray. We have about 44% residential and about 56% commercial. When you look at some of our peers, Apex is about 80-20, Cary is about 70-30. And then you have to take into consideration the airport overlay. So inherently, we have more commercial percentages, right? So it's going to be more difficult to have trees with impervious surface, is really sort of what it comes down to. That commercial number, that percentage does include apartment complexes. I did want to highlight some of the imagery that actually Elliott Ward in Planning was able to put together for us, looking at the intersection of Traybrook and Town Hall Drive. So this just gives you just a snapshot, right? The top picture is 2016, the bottom picture is 2022. So just in that amount of time, you can see the difference in tree canopy. Same here with Mason Farm Road. You can see that you can't even see the homes here. There's been so much canopy development in just even that short time. We're also seeing a lot of, when you look at how have we gained, we're getting a lot of modifications to existing commercial entities in the town. And of course, our new amendment applies to that, right? But it is too soon for us to really know the results of our amendments since we just passed them last June. We need a little bit more time to assess the value, not the value, but the benefit, the tree save that will be captured as a part of those amendments. And we just don't have that data to access yet. So let's talk a little bit about active and future efforts. Of course, we just referred to the tree preservation, open space, perimeter buffers, and landscaping UDO amendments that Chris Lawson and his team helped us through last year, where we created all of these priority areas. We have priority retention areas for sensitive areas, right? Wetlands, buffers, floodplains, and then we have canopy adjacent. We wanted to prioritize those areas for residential uses, greenways, right-of-ways, and then of course existing tree canopy for mature trees was also prioritized, as you remember, I'm sure. Other efforts surrounding MARCOM, the MARCOM use agreement, and Wake Tech with Wake County Public School System. may offer an opportunity for us to preserve more land and tree canopies. So that's something that's certainly on our radar. As far as education and awareness, we've been working really hard to incorporate trees as much as possible with many of the themed things we've been doing over the last year. Earth Day, actually Davie Resource Group partnered with us and we gave away 5 trees, substantial trees based on a quiz that folks were able to take. The Student Art Poster Contest, which is underway right now. Tell all your friends. That's due this Friday, but the theme is Morrisville Roots for Trees. So we're really trying to make an effort to bring this to the community's awareness. We being, I think, me and about 4 or 5 others attended the Great Tree Conference in Cary, along with the mayor, a few weeks ago, which was fantastic. And then, of course, we have our native plant, 70% native plant and trees, 70% minimum goal for all town projects. In some cases, as with the native plantings that we just did at Northwest Park, that was 100% native, and so we're really coming together as a team and as a town to make sure that we're following these and surpassing these goals whenever possible. I think that was a really nice example. And then, of course, planting and maintenance. Public Works has been doing quite a bit to plant new trees. They've planted more than 75 since 2021 in our parks, along greenways, right-of-ways. And they've also adopted proper planting protocols, including a fair amount of remediation and integrative pest maintenance practices, watering, pruning, et cetera. We are in the process of educating ourselves as much as possible so that we can be a better advocate for our trees. So how might we operationalize this data that we have from Wake County and from Davie Resource Group? I've starred the items that I feel we can take advantage of in pretty short order. Tree planting initiatives. There are a number of funding opportunities through the North Carolina Forest Service. The tree canopy preservation and planting goals, I think that's something that we've been talking about this, right? Because we've been waiting for this study to finalize so that we could have the data needed to start to create goals. And then ultimately the development of an implementation plan based on all of this great data and the potential planting areas that the study provided, as well as Tree Keeper Canopy software, which is, I just have a screenshot here for you, but basically all of the data that went into the study is available online. It's available to everyone, community, all stakeholders. So you can kind of put in different parameters such as tree canopy goals in certain areas, and you can actually visualize it on the screen and use that as a tool for creating your own goals or prioritizing your own tree canopy. Just a couple more slides here. Planting opportunities based on the Wake County report. Those are potential planting areas, PPAs. They were, we looked at the vulnerability, right? Those urban heat islands, social equity, stormwater, created a prioritized system, and the study identified about 1,200 acres of trees that fall into these various categories, these priority ratings. Now, it's really important to mention that this is public and private land, so we need to be really strategic in how we address this. Of course, addressing them in the town is one thing, but addressing them with commercial and outside of what we own is something to keep in mind and equally as important. So I wanted to provide you a visualization from Morrisville Community Park. This is the PPA, so starting down here, this is the larger area. The orange is high priority, and so we took that area and we blew it up and we just put some trees here. This is just a rendering. This is what it could look like. So that's an example of the kind of work that we would do using that Tree Keeper Canopy software. So next, where do we go next? I would propose that we work with our Citizen Advisory Committee, MESC, to evaluate tree community tree canopy goals and potentially a program. I'd like the opportunity to work, obviously, Public Works, Parks and Rec, and Planning to collaborate on the creation of this implementation plan that I've referenced, informed by the Canopy software platform. We also have identified in our master sustainability plan to develop a scope of work for evaluating incentives for developers. That's in FY24, so that's something we've already identified that we know we need to work toward. I've been talking with the town of Cary on how could we potentially partner with them on their My Tree, Our Tree program. So that's something that is in the works. We're just having conversations right now, but they're really good conversations. The North Carolina Forest Service obviously has funding, and then finally, the Wake County study and the Tree Keeper tools. Those are both links in your presentation so that you can access those items directly. I don't have it with me, but I can certainly share it with you. I was hoping we could do a demo of the Tree Keeper or Canopy software, but there's so much data in that tool that we might be here until about 10, just to sort of really, show you what its capabilities are. But I'd be happy to share with you a video at a later date so that you can reference that at another time. So at this point, I'm happy to take questions. We have staff here as well. Elliot is here, I think. And obviously the representatives from both Wake County and Davie Resource Group.
Okay, wonderful presentation. Throughout, we had some people lift their hands. So I'll start with Councilmember Abadi, followed by Councilmember Scroggins Johnson.
Great. Great presentation, Kimberly, really.
Thank you.
I think there's a lot here, certainly, to work with. Two things specifically that I wanted to ask you about. So I definitely understand your point about being careful that, we can't necessarily plant things on land that's owned by, that's zone commercial, already built. But in all the time I've been on council, I've never talked to a business owner that didn't want to be a good corporate citizen. Mm-hmm. And I really do think that this is a good opportunity to partner with the business community, because I think that, a lot of them live here, all of them work here, and so I really want that to be, I really just want to get that out there and say that I think that's an area of partnership that I think would prove very fruitful. The other thing was, so I remember talking about this, and I think this was like just before your time. It was like on our first retreat when in 2019, and we had recently done a planting at the Cary Tree Archive, and I remember we were talking about trees at the retreat, and we were saying it would be so great to have something like that in Morrisville. And I was just wondering, is that on your radar at all as a possibility? Because I love that idea.
I love that idea too. And I love the Cary Tree Archive. I think that's something we could certainly put on our list for assessment.
Okay.
Yeah,
all right, that'd be great. Thank you.
Yeah, of course.
Councilmember Scroggins Johnson, followed by Councilmember Frender, please.
Thank you. This is an incredibly informative presentation and the information specifically to Morrisville is very helpful. I'm looking at slide number 7. I don't know if we could go to that slide. But this really tells a story, and I'm glad that you highlighted Morrisville. A couple things kind of resonate with me. We're the smallest jurisdiction in acreage. Percentages, when you look at those kind of comparisons, are kind of unfair because it's a percentage of a very small parcel of land. So to have a street takes up a lot of land in Morrisville. It's the same width. It's the same dimensions in a larger municipality, so that same street is going to be a smaller percentage of impervious pavement. So it's it's a statistic, but just to put it into perspective, we have to understand how certain minimal standards will make us look a little bit less favorable with tree canopy. With that said, I believe Morrisville is a leader in urban development. You've just described to us over the last few minutes about all the policies and all the strategies we are now implementing that are very new, so we don't know the full impact, but we are addressing the tree canopy, and we have been for over a year, since 2021. It's just trees take time to grow, and it's something that other municipalities like Fuquay-Varina, they look great in the tree canopy, but they have not had a lot of urban development like Morrisville has. So are their policies as strong as Morrisville? So I think we do need to take a cautious approach, but we also have to have faith that we are making good strides and making good decisions that are foundational. So I really applaud a lot of the strategies that you've been working with your team and with the Citizen Advisory Committee. But I caution everybody just to look at this. Morrisville is in the middle of the triangle, and we are bordered by large cities, and it's just the roads alone kind of impact our ability to, work with a stronger tree canopy, unless, of course, we do this thoughtfully with policies. So thank you.
Thank you.
Councilmember Fender, followed by Councilmember Rao, please.
Thank you for putting this. Thank you, Kimberly, for putting this presentation together. It's very informative. I do have to admit, when this study came out a couple weeks ago, I was very depressed. I knew it was bad in Morrisville with the lack of tree canopy. But having the lowest percentage just verified that. But however, your last few slides in the presentation, listing out actions that we can do, makes it a little bit more positive that we do have a path forward. I did have a couple questions. The software, was it the Tree Keeper software?
That's right.
Had identified where the trees had increased, and one of those areas was around Perimeter Park. Do you happen to know what type of trees those are that have been planted in that area? Like, I'm wondering, if it's like a crepe myrtle, would it show up on the, would it analyze that as being picked up? He's nodding yes.
Yes. Yes, it would show up.
Okay.
So, right, you have leaves on crepe myrtle, so your carbon is not going to be as great with crepe myrtle, right?
Right.
But yes, it is going to show up as canopy.
Okay. Okay, and then the other question I had was, it also did that analysis to determine the PPAs.
Mm-hmm.
How does it determine that? Like, what criteria is built in to determine, like, where a good spot is?
So we do have, I think your question is, are you asking about the methodology that we used to rank the different vulnerability assessments?
Like, what criteria did it use to determine what areas are good for the potential plant areas?
do you want to come up?
Just blank space or something else?
Hi, my name is Bill Schroyer. I'm with Wake County. So for the planning priority areas, we used several different layers, including block groups. So we have a vulnerable block group area. So we knew by that data where we had more vulnerable communities. We also used some CDC health data, which identifies areas of high asthma prevalence, and we used something that was kind of high, or I guess would be low mental health days. That was something specifically from the CDC health data. We also used the heat island, urban heat island data, which was Landsat satellite information. That's an average data set between a March timeframe and a July timeframe. So that's a little bit of winter and a little bit of summer. We used, those were generally the kind of the socioeconomic variables, and then we also used variables that were a high prevalence of stormwater, floodplain, soil erosion. So those were much more of the environmental variables. So we have those in both indexes, and then we combine the indexes to do a composite planting priority area. We also, it's worth mentioning that we removed areas or had excluded areas that we would not want planting. So right-of-ways, large easements like utility easements, golf courses, ball fields, and active agriculture. So we didn't want to recommend planting in the areas that were active, and then focused on those areas that we could rank as high prevalence for potential planting.
Okay, thank you. So I'm wondering, the list of items that you had of things we can do. I'm wondering what we can do, what more we can do. Like you've listed here, land purchase and conservation, and this is what we've done in the past. But I would like to challenge the council that we need to continue to do land purchase in the future to help preserve the tree canopy. Just planting 75 trees over the next 2 years is not going to do enough. And, we, up until a year ago, the town of Morrisville had one of the most lax tree preservation ordinances in our county. During the campaign, I did a lot of, before I was elected, did a lot of research and compared Holly Springs, Cary, Apex, their ordinances to Morrisville's, and ours was one of the more favorable to developers. And, fortunately, we have made updates, but it's kind of hard to put the genie back in the bottle at this point, and I worry that we may be too late. So I just feel like we need to do more than, the council needs to do more than rely on what the environmental and stormwater committee is going to do. The council needs to come together and do more drastic measures, like more land purchase, and think of other ways. Is it a possibility, Kimberly, and I know this would be more planning too, can we plant trees in the medians of our roads, like along Morrisville Carpenter or along McCrimmon Extension? Are we doing that now?
So I'm glad you brought that up. Actually, in the medians is a problem with the DOT.
Okay.
However, the county is working with the DOT right now and DRG, Davie Resource, to add trees to the interchange of 540 and 54. So right there in Morrisville, that was a big wide open space. The DOT approached us and said, hey, based off of your study, we might be able to provide some areas, and that's one we're currently focusing on, and we got some additional funding in order to contract with Davie actually to do that. I feel like 14,000 trees, something, it's going to be a mix between deciduous and evergreen with an 80% survival rate, kind of what is planned for that area. So there are some opportunities. Medians are problematic, but we do have opportunities around right-of-ways on either side. When the DOT clears for the purpose of like 540, for example, they clear more than what is really necessary, but they need to do that for the purpose of safety and construction. And then now we're hoping that we have some opportunity maybe to come back in and fill in some of those margins.
So does Wake County have any other recommendations that don't show up here in these slides?
We don't. What we're working towards now is looking at different funding opportunities and opportunities within the community and a lot of our potential publicly owned lands, like our open space. So we have a pretty active open space purchasing program, and a lot of those in the past may have been fallow fields or farmland, which would be prime for adding some additional trees.
Can you buy some property in Morrisville, please?
Can we? We would like to. We have a prioritization model, but we don't necessarily have the money based on the property values. But we do have, the county does have conservation program for farmland conservation through the Soil and Water Conservation District. So there are opportunities. And if anything comes along, let us know, and we'll see where that aligns with our open space prioritization model.
We don't have much farmland in Morrisville. All right, thank you.
Councilmember Rao, followed by myself, please.
Okay, I just have one idea, possibly, and then just a few questions that I'm going to ask based on some residents that have emailed me before the meeting. So on their behalf, I'm going to and there were some things I thought were interesting. But the first observation is you've talked about a data-driven process. And so I'm, like many people, a visual kind of learner, right? So what I would like to see is, like one column that shows how many remaining areas of the town would we have multifamily development. When you look at TOD, town center, and areas where that would require rezoning, not by right, but just like, or maybe include both, just how many apartments, and or a multifamily, okay, or just development. And then I'd like to know the average amount of trees that are taken down for, an average development, like 250 unit complex or 300, so that we can get a read of, how much development we have in the process, how much trees would go down if we went through all the development. And where I'm going with this is that a conversation with our development partners on the fact that, we're trying to increase our tree canopy, and what are the kinds of collaborative things we can do with them to make sure whether we can get them to come back with different programs and ideas. So I just want your thoughts on that. I mean, could we work with our data portal, our open data portal, or could we get some of this data shared with the residents and shared with the development community so someone could actually get a real-time snapshot of, looking at the data, and even the council, so I think we can make better decisions. As a follow-up, the question that was brought to me, but I think it's very interesting, is the first question for you is, have we ever thought of having an education program for developers and, having them consider applying carbon tax credits in the development, which I thought is interesting. So I don't know if that's something that we can throw back to the appropriate staff members, or what is the required replacement for each mature tree removed within 2 to 4 trees?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
What is the required replacement for each mature tree removed? with 2 to 4 trees? That was the question that was given to me. But, I mean, I don't know really, but, and for those of you listening live or here tonight, if you have any questions that you'd like to ask, just please send them our way or send them to our staff so we can, as a council, come back with anything you're thinking. Because I think, and I really like Councilmember Fender's, ideas of doing things that are just beyond what we're doing right now. But if you could give an insight in terms of just the educational program developers and the replacement, when we replace a mature tree, what's the process in that, right? If we, are we saying that for every tree that we take down, are we going to plant, for 4 more trees? Or
I don't know that we have something specific like that.
Do we have
Elliot?
any specific programs like that? That's all I have for now. I just wanted to throw that idea out there, and if you can answer some of these questions. Also about the carbon tax credits for developers.
Hi, Elliot Ward, Planning Manager for Morrisville. Yeah, so to answer your question for replacement trees, I don't have specifics off the top of my head, but we do have requirements for caliper. Forgot the word. As far as the amount of caliper to replace what certain trees that were taken down. Obviously, that doesn't apply across the board for an entire development, for a whole site, but in specific circumstances, we do have requirements in the UDO for caliper replacement. You're looking at, for a mature tree, multiple trees to add up to a certain caliper total, basically, for replacement. And then, I'm sorry, the other question was, as far as development incentives? Is that what you're looking for?
Carbon tax incentives, getting an educational program for developers. I mean, we have an education program or something that we can, share with them best practices for tree canopy preservation. And, the question asked to me, I don't know much about carbon tax credits, but, could we educate them about incentive programs that they could get if they, were able to preserve more trees than what they come back with in their proposals to us and future councils?
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely something that we can look into and staff can discuss. And Kimberly and I are going to be working in the next year, as we have additional UDO text amendments coming up as far as developer sustainability incentives. So, I mean, that could definitely be added to the list. We can look into it further, come back with more information.
And the final thing is just that snapshot, whether it's a slide or even if you could point me in the right direction where I can look at it and just kind of know how many more apartments we have to build, what is the average expectation of trees being reduced for those future developments where it's, multifamily and townhomes, how many of that is, and then what would we have to do to preserve more trees, to increase our percentage, and to make sure that we're having that conversation with the development community early on in the process, along with the planning and zoning before it comes to us, so that we can, have a conversation about, I just, But I will say that the 44%, the 50%, 55% commercial has been a good thing in terms of it's kept our tax rate relatively low. That's the really beautiful thing about Morrisville. A lot of our growth has kind of paid for itself with a lot of the good development. But now I think we're at a point now where we've got to sort of see how do we slow it down, but in a way that's balanced.
If I could, I really like the carbon tax credit idea. I think that's really interesting. Another benefit of being a part of the project team and working with Wake County directly on this is that all 12 of the municipalities were all planning to work together, right, to strengthen our tree canopy holistically throughout the region, throughout the county. And so there's lots of best practices and ideas that are already floating around that I think we're going to be able to leverage and take advantage of. So I'm excited about that. And as we look at developer incentives, I think asking that community what they're willing to do is a really logical, good first step. So thank you, Councilmember Rao.
I'll go followed by Councilmember Garamella. So I just want to confirm, I think recently we were talking about TOD and how there is no tree preservation for those at all. Is that correct? those three TOD
That's how I
areas.
understand it, yes.
And that was an intentional decision. This is just being really transparent that we're looking for density in that space and to limit their ability to use that area. For the McCrimmon extension area, is that also the case, or do we still have tree preservation requirements in that and the town center? So those are our two areas where we're going for density, but what are our tree preservation requirements in those two?
As far as specific requirements, I'd have to,
Well, not
get
the
back
exact
to you,
numbers, but do they exist?
There are tree preservation requirements for McCrimmon Extension, and then Town Center as well would be, there are tree preservation requirements. Obviously, that is going to be handled through a PD agreement, so additional requirements can be placed on Town Center as well, but not unlike the TOD. The TOD is obviously aimed towards high density, so the other areas will have tree preservation requirements.
Okay. And as was mentioned by Councilmember Fender, very proud of the efforts that we made in that direction to have those codified. I'd be very interested in knowing, we don't have any kind of essentially PIL area for that, because the idea came to me that for every tree that they cut down, they don't have to preserve it, but now that we have priority planting areas, if we could have a fund that they have to contribute funds into, so this would be a UDO change if we were supportive of that, to have such a fund, and that would help us mitigate our costs out of pocket. So they want to be good corporate citizens, they want to build, they're cutting down trees, they don't have space to replant them. They maybe say they would like to, but they don't have the room. We have the space, but we don't have the money. So that might be an opportunity there. I'm not sure if it could start voluntary or we could just sort of put it out there. There's not lots of opportunities left. We're mostly built out. But anything that we can do to try to make those priority planting areas happen, I think would be a plus. And as Councilmember Rabati said, there's corporate citizens who want to help us with that. Sort of digging into the Tree Keeper program, I love that a lot. It looks really great. For the Morrisville Community Park, if you could bring up that slide, I just had an idea. We had a walk and bike to school there the other day, and that field actually gets used for soccer. It used to have soccer goals up there all the time. So I look at that and I'm like, okay, we can have 2 trees on each end, and they can be goals, and then some things on the side. So if we can use that space without planting trees right in the middle of what would be a play area, we can be creative and create a little mini soccer field. So if we can
Great idea.
find places like that all over town, and I see a lot of the orange in the bottom right of this slide, that's private property, but I think there's opportunities that if we provide like a match, like they do in lots of main streets when they do the facade improvements and things like that, we can create more opportunities to build more trees, because frankly, our tree preservation ordinance is trying to preserve as much of what exists now, but trees are getting cut. So the only way to really make a dent and get back at things is to plant more where their trees are not there now. I'm very excited about the 540 and 54 that Bill mentioned. 14,000 sounds like a huge number.
Sir, if you don't mind, for the recording, could you come up to the microphone for us? Thank you very much, and identify yourself. Thank you.
Good evening, Joe Joyner and Davie Resource Group. In response to the question about the 540, 54 interchange, currently barren, there are plans to replant it with seedlings. I don't remember the total number offhand, but if you want an idea of what it might look like in 15 or so years or 20 years of maturity, look at the 540 I-40 interchange. So just 1 mile or so north right there. That's kind of the planting plan that's going to be put into place. So it'll be look natural and completely wooded is the idea.
Okay, that's great, because and Bill mentioned that would be mixed species and stuff, kind of like a mini forest that they talked about at the urban conference, which so makes it more sustainable and healthier.
Yes, the mix, it'll be a deciduous coniferous mix. Don't know the exact mix offhand, pending approval by the DOT, also pending availability at the nursery, but it'll be a mix of the two.
Are there opportunities, I guess wildflowers don't sequester nearly as much and they're not as sustainable, or what about wildflowers, more places instead of trees or in conjunction with trees?
Well, I'll just speak to that and then hand it back to Kimberly. Wildflowers, they do not sequester as much carbon, but flowers have an important role in terms of pollinators. There's also pollinator-friendly trees, pine trees and other types of trees. All trees flower or fruit, so trees are often overlooked as an important source of pollinators, both actually to provide the pollen as well as to provide habitat for the pollinators.
Okay. Thank you very much. I wish I had better handwriting. Okay. And you said that heat islands, Bill, were part of the decision about the PPAs. Is there any more intentionality that we can put around heat islands? I know it was mentioned that heat islands are probably where the impervious and the parking lots are, and that's hard to have healthy trees thrive in that space. And I think about perimeter park and stuff like that and how that's just islands of parking lots. If there's any way that we can be intentional, Councilmember Rao talked about best practices.
Well, that would be it, best practices. So I think like a lot of times we see unhealthy trees in parking lot islands, and I think the method of planting them following best management practices would benefit maintaining those types of trees in those environments.
And is our UDO currently requiring those kind of, what are they called, boxes that are best practices? Or is that something we should maybe try to implement to make sure that the town center and things like that have trees that are going to be sustainable?
It's not required in the UDO. We have spoken in the past year and a half with some public works folks as far as planting requirements for town-owned trees. So there are diagrams existing in potentially our engineering manual. Somewhere there is best practices as far as planting goes for our trees. It's not in the UDO itself, but it's not box. It doesn't include the boxes. It's just as far as depth and mulch and how proper to plant the actual trees so they don't die so easily.
Okay, so easily. But I mean, our walking tour was all about making sure there was enough nutrition for each of them. So I'd like to see if we want to investigate including that, so we're not building something that needs to be redone later. Like really good presentation. Now, Councilmember Garamella, questions, thoughts?
Yeah. A couple of questions. Can we plant more trees in the tree preservation area? I know it's protected, but do we have anything that we can, have more in that area?
Are you asking, can we require it?
No, I'm saying, can we plant more, not required? Like usually we have 10%, 20%, whatever it is, right? Like we reserve. And many a times I see like, it dies or it doesn't, no one really goes back and checks on what is going on. But if there is opportunity to plant more in that area, can we do that?
I think as as I work with planning and public works and parks, and we create that implementation plan, using the tree keeper canopy, using the data from Wake County, I think the answer is yes. But we want to make sure that we're doing it in the best way possible, right? Using those best practices and proper planting techniques. We're going to plant as much as we can based on, right, this would probably be a budgetary ask for next year. But I think that the easy answer is yes, within reason. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and the reason I was asking because when you have the tree protection area, you're not allowed to obviously cut any trees, and the trees die and they fall down, but there is no, replacing or adding more into that area. Like, for example, Breckenridge, there is a section, trees have died over a period of time. There's no requirement. And like the gentleman was talking about the 540, 54 intersection, think of every small pieces that we can add more. It only helps us because the thing that really help me understand is the perimeter because of the, planned development, the amount of trees that you have to park in the plant in the parking lots, and all those things was clearly reflected. So that's one. And the second question is, what is your direction to all the HOAs? Because there's a big, my Facebook lights up, regarding Bradford Pairs, because people don't like it. South Carolina has passed something that, it's illegal, and all the developers, most of them, for better canopy, because, on paper it'll look good, but their lifespan is only 10 years or 20 or 15 years, and they pretty much have a root rot and it falls down. And you talked about the native plants. Is there a directive to the HOAs, because every house has to have a tree in front of it, and we struggle which one to recommend them, and which one, and how much, we know how much caliber because our year dictates that, but always they say maple, and some people get something. So we don't have a clear direction on, what to say.
In our UDO, we do have invasives listed as well as native trees. We do provide a lot of information in that, or is it the admin manual? I might have that mixed up. It's the admin manual, my apologies, which informs the UDO. But that does have a very comprehensive list of the trees that are best for our zone and the climate. So maybe we could take that a step further, I think is what you're asking.
Yeah, a step further, and when you send these news articles, or like emails to all the HOAs, I think that would be a good one to put in, because we struggle, because people have sentiments, oh, this tree is too big, the roots will go underneath my house, I want to cut it. And I don't have an answer to that, right. And in anticipation it may get into the septic tank, like the sewer right. pipes. Right. And I said, okay, they'll get an arborist saying that, yeah, and we can't deny it. And then they'll replace it with something which will take 20 years to grow. So that's where I wanted to see not just regular, but also established neighborhoods of how we can keep it and add more to it. You have given a good example of Mason Farm Road, right? What it was and what it has grown. So I think using our existing neighborhoods, which are established, also helps to offset.
Good point. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, please.
So a lot of what I want to say, Kimberly, has been said, but thank you. This is really informative and really important conversation to have. So a couple of quick things. Councilman Garamella and I are on the same wavelength. When we approved site plans, we required development to preserve some trees, and then we also required them to plant additional plantings. He just talked about what happens in a neighborhood, which is important to understand and to help the neighbors as trees die or things happen. But I'm really concerned about the commercial area. What are we doing? And you don't have to answer this now, but what are we doing to make sure that the approved site plans comply today with what was approved? If a tree or the tree preservation area is diseased or something happens, how are we making sure that they are replanting? I mean, I don't see any accountability, and that concerns me deeply, and that has concerned me for a while. So, and maybe we are doing something, I just don't know about it, but I think that's an area that deserves some thought as we move forward and what we're going to do here. So again, don't need an answer unless you have one right now. I don't need an answer right now, but please look into that and let me know what we're doing as far as that goes. And then as far as UDO amendments, you talked about the coniferous versus deciduous, and now one's better than the other. Is all that reflected, and again, I don't need an answer today, but is all that reflected in our current UDOs, or do we need to go back and beef up that portion of the UDO? And I know in the past we talked about native trees, and I know we made changes to that, but when you know better, you do better. So do we need to go back and beef that up too? So that's another to-do I would put on the future kind of things to do. Councilmember Robati talked about working with the commercial development, that this would be important to them as well. I think that's true, and I think that a partnership with the chamber would be really important. And I would love for you to give this kind of presentation to the chamber community. I would love for them to have some kind of a seminar, or I don't know, whatever, to inform the business community as well about how important this is. Sorry, I'm looking through my notes. And then as far this slide you have up now, this concerned me a little bit too. And I know, this is an example, but when we look at parkland, we have to balance the open space that's available to our residents and especially our children with what we're going to do with planting. So I'm sure you would not. This would be a staff effort, and you would have to talk with Parks and Rec to identify the appropriate locations. But I just want to kind of reiterate that as well, that's important. Again, a balance to everything we do. And then the last thing I wanted to mention was the tree keeper link that did not work for me. So I don't know if was that the link you had on one of your slides? Could you send that? For some reason, that's not working for me. Could you send that like in an email so I can go out and actually look at it?
Certainly, yes.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll also include the video with the training so that you can kind of have a better idea of how to walk through it.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate that. And then as far as, all the staff efforts, yes, thank you.
And I wanted to just mention, thank you for that. This, as well as all of the kind of compilation of things that we've done so far with Town of Morrisville staff, has been a very collaborative effort between planning, parks, public works. And that's the way we intend to move forward with this topic as well. So I just wanted to make sure I gave that credit is not just mine.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I think we're using a lot of synergies within the town, and thank you for kind of spearheading and bringing us all forward with intentional planning in this direction. It's very helpful. So thank you all very much for that. And thank you to all those different advisory committees too, who are sometimes part of the plantings, which is kind of fun as well.
Yes.
And you have a Green Day coming up. You want to say a little something about that?
Yeah, sure. Green Day, November 4th, 8 to noon. Goodwill is also joining us, so they're going to be taking gently used furniture and shoes and clothes, as well as having textile bins that will be there. So we keep adding collections to Green Day, so please do join us.
And paper shredding as always.
Always paper shredding, yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Wonderful. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Okay. It is 8:01. We're a little bit overdue for a 15-minute break, so why don't we go ahead and reconvene at 8:17. Evening, we're coming back into session now. We are at the item of public address. I'd like to recognize Town Clerk Eric Smith. He'll present any public comments received.
Thank you, Mayor Cawley. There were no comments received for public address, and there were no individuals signed up to give in-person public comment.
Okay, I don't see anyone in the room who might wish to do that, so we'll move on. There are two action items on this evening's agenda: approval of the Transit-Oriented Development and Zoning Plan, and a resolution amending the appointed public bodies administrative policy. Chris Lawson, Planning Manager, will facilitate the first item. Mr. Lawson.
Hey, good evening, Council. Tonight, I just have two items to update Council. The first one, it was requested, and it basically is a short presentation which breaks down the difference between what the transportation plan accomplishes and then what a TIA would look at. So I'll begin with this. So what is a TIA? Basically, it's an analysis of what a development's impact for the transportation system would be. And the goal of it is to recommend improvements that would keep traffic at an acceptable level of service. So when are they required? They're required for generally three reasons. If a proposed development is expected to generate 100 or more trips for 1 hour in a day, or 1,000 trips total for that day. Secondly, if there's any amendment to the comprehensive plan, which would designate a parcel to a higher trip generation use. So example here is low density to medium density. And finally, if a rezoning proposes a reclassification of a site to a more intensive trip generation that is not consistent with the adopted comprehensive plan or land use plan. Okay, just to kind of go over the quick process. How do we know when a TIE is required? Basically, at a pre-submittal meeting, it's determined generally then. So if it's not a rezoning, if it's just a site plan, a trip generation memo is submitted, and it's based on the Institute of Transportation Engineers trip generation manual. And that's where we get the number if there's going to be over 1,000 trips in a day or over 100 trips within 1 hour of a day. So once it's determined that a TIE is required, the developer will enter into a MOU with the town. This is handled by your transportation planning staff. And basically the MOU designates the scope of the TIA, essentially outlining which intersections nearby will be studied, which roads will be studied, how far out, and all those things. So once MIA is executed, the developer will then actually conduct the TIA. TIA has to be completed prior to a site plan or rezoning. In a rezoning's case, the TIA will feed into recommended conditions of the conditional rezoning. It'll also feed into, for site plan, recommended, just for example, like a right turn lane. If one's recommended at a TIA, that'll have to be required with the site plan. So how does this differ from the comprehensive transportation plan? The CTP, or transportation plan, is really the main tool for transportation regulation. It covers all sorts of transportation items, but basically it provides standardized cross sections for every road in the town, besides local streets, which is covered in the engineering design manual. Local street would be one you'd find typically in your neighborhood. You probably turn off of a local street into your driveway. So besides those streets, every other road in town has a specific cross section laid out in this plan. The CTP also covers sidewalks and off-street multi-use paths, and then greenways and greenway access points. It also deals with right-of-way widths. So the total right-of-way is often wider than the road itself. So the right-of-way will include for sidewalks, off-street bike paths, room for utilities, and other features like that. So what is the TIA's role when applied with the transportation plan? So the transportation plan is expected to provide for most of the transportation-related improvements, but the TIA will really hone in on the specific development. So the size, the use, where the points of egress and ingress are, and the TIA will recommend improvements based on the study of the specific development. So the way I think about this is, use a metaphor, a large ship carrying something across the ocean, that's the transportation plan, and it can get all the way to port, but when it gets into port, it really needs smaller ships to help maneuver it within that port, and that's the TIA. So that's the metaphor I kind of use in my own mind about that. So the transportation plan covers almost everything, but the TIA helps really hone in on the specific development and the proposed access points. So let me go through a quick example. This is from the transportation plan on the left. It is the Morrisville East Connector. It's a newly planned road that connects McCrimmon with Airport Boulevard. And it's currently under construction. You can see this is the right-of-way that's already dedicated, but the road itself has not been built yet. So that's required by the transportation plan. To continue, this is another page from the transportation plan, and it discusses what type of street this is and what cross-section to use, if you can follow my mouse here. So that says it's a collector street. That is a 3A. On a separate page, it has, the plan will have the 3A requirements, and here they are. So 12-foot travel lanes, 5-foot space between the road and sidewalk, middle turn lane in the middle of it, and then different sizes of sidewalks. So if we layer on a TIA on top of the transportation plan, it's going to provide for specific guidance on turning movements, additional lanes, stop signs, stoplights, if they're needed. So the following two slides show the TIA recommendations from Project Spark, which is currently under construction on McCrimmon, and how they connect to the Morrisville East Connector Road. So the first one comes in a text form, and this just says, I've kind of highlighted in green here, restriping of the northbound turn lane, and then create a left turn with 150 feet of storage on the east-west connector. And then my last slide here just shows what does this look like in graphic form, and this is kind of what a TIA generally looks like. It's not a perfect map, but it kind of has all the roads, all the intersections studied, and then this is phase one of the Spark project. This project also had a fully built out TIA, which will include more improvements. But you can see here's the road here, and there's that 150 feet right-hand turn lane. So the transportation plan, essentially, if you were driving on the east-west connector towards McCrimmon, and we just had the transportation plan, you would come to a stop, and there would be a single lane, and you could take a left or right from that single lane. What the TIA said in this case is there needs to be an additional lane, so there'll be one lane dedicated to turning left, one lane dedicated to turning right. So there'll be enough traffic generated that you need more than just that one lane to go both ways. So that's the end of this part of the presentation. Happy to take any questions.
I do not see any questions at this time, Mr. Lawson.
Okay. Well, thank you. And so I wanted to lead tonight's presentation with this because it feeds into some of the things council asked for at the last meeting, which was a study of Church Street, the traffic generated by the TOD district, and kind of a plan of attack for getting that study. And I don't have any updates for you on that tonight. I believe I'll have those back on November 14th, just the turnaround between agendas. I'll need a little more time to prepare for a plan of attack, and I hope to have that for you at the November 14th meeting. Besides that, I have no other updates for you this evening on this item.
Okay, so we asked a lot of questions, and staff is still looking to bring back us a timeline about how things would look towards learning more about potential TIA and what the possible ramifications would be in the Church Street area. That was a big thing last time. So at this time, the public hearing is still open. Did we receive any public hearing comments?
No, sir, there were no public hearing comments received and no individuals signed up to give in-person public hearing comment.
Okay, does anyone have any more questions for staff on this item? So it could be the will of the council could kind of continue this until we have more information, or we could make a motion. Is there any desire? We'd have to close the public hearing to make a motion though, so is there any interest in closing the public hearing? Seeing none. Yes, please, sir. Well, it kind of depends on what we're waiting for in order to make the decision.
Yeah, we gave them something that we needed. We asked for the TIA, or at least they said TIA will take longer. We will get a plan of action of when the TIA will come. And we don't know the results of that. So by shutting down the public hearing now, you're not even, I myself don't know what it is, even for the people to even comment on it. So I think it makes logical sense to just keep it till we get something back.
Yeah, I agree that we could keep it open, but to be clear, they're just going to bring us back a plan to have a TIA sometime many months in the future. So it's not like we're going to have TIA information in order to help inform this decision.
Absolutely, but at least you would have that opportunity at that time to close it.
Okay, that sounds fine with me. I'm seeing general head nods of agreement on that, so we don't have to make any announcement, but the public hearing continues to be open, and staff will bring us back any updates or anything at the next meeting or after that as you guys.
Correct. We do not plan on being back on the October 24th meeting, but we do plan on the November 14th meeting.
Okay.
It's that extra 2 weeks of preparation.
Is that fine with everybody? Okay. So thank you very much for the report and the update. Appreciate you.
Thank you.
Not sure where we're having a lot of sound, but we'll just keep on moving along. At this time, I'll recognize Town Clerk Eric Smith to present the next item.
I'm looking at everybody. It's not any of us. None of us are moving. I agree.
Yeah, I don't think it's from council. I'm not sure where they're coming from.
Well, why don't we just try as an experiment? Why don't we all turn off our microphones until he's done presenting, or we have questions?
It's not from council. I'm not sure if there's an extra mic that may have been placed outside, or I checked with Katie, so we should have a response. Grab this up. All right, good evening, Town Council. Tonight I'm going to present some updates to the Appointed Public Bodies Administrative Policy. As you are aware, this policy is what governs the management, oversight principles, and administrative protocols for the advisory bodies appointed by the Town Council. It underwent its last revision in June of 2022. During this revision cycle in 2022, there were some changes made to include minor clarifications reflecting actual practices, an expanded section on conduct, including a procedure for handling complaints, and the addition of guidelines for social media usage. If you recall, during your March 30th work session, we did provide some updates to the advisory committee application and the appointment process. Town Council discussed and approved these updates. So to ensure alignment with those updates that you made, there are some required changes to the Appointed Public Bodies Administrative Policy. So I'm going to bring up the red line version of the policy here. Let's scroll up to the top. Okay, here we go. The Office of the Town Clerk, along with senior management and select advisory committee staff, liaisons, we did a review of the policy, and we identified some areas that required further administrative clarifications to go along with those updates that Town Council previously made. This 2023 update is going to focus on several key areas. The first focus area is going to be to align the policy with the established practices that Council previously approved. It's going to also introduce some changes to the work plan, since we're going to reflect the biennial development cycle versus the previous annual work plan development cycle. It also allows Town Council to have the discretion to adjust the appointment terms for both the chair and vice chair, and the term limits for all appointees. And there's also some updates regarding the recruitment and orientation schedule. To expedite this review, I plan on going over those substantial changes. There were a couple administrative changes that we made just for further clarification. For clarity, there was confusion regarding business days, calendar days, some of the language used within the policy. So we made some administrative changes that don't actually affect the intention of the policy as Town Council designed it. But if you do have questions regarding those smaller administrative changes, feel free to stop me along the way, and we can review those as we go along. The first change that you're going to notice is right here on page 1. Throughout the document, this is an administrative change, but since it's somewhat large, I did feel it important to discuss. Throughout the document, the staff member of the town that supported the advisory committee was often referred to as the support staff, the staff lead, a variety of different names. So just to come to some consensus, we decided to name this individual the staff liaison. And we also put this title within the definitions and formally defined staff liaison as it wasn't defined before. I'll keep scrolling. There weren't any substantive changes here under standard procedures. We just added the chapter for the general statute that outlines the open meetings law. And as you can see here, like I said, there were various changes just to align everything under one title of staff liaison here. One of the first substantial changes that we did make is going to be listed here under committee membership and authority. Section 3 previously stated that advocacy authority and policy guidance for specific goals and initiatives remain with Town Council. Our support staff did think that this needed some further clarification, so we added a sentence stating that Unless defined within the UDO, advisory committees do not have decision-making authority. We just felt this would further enhance town council's intent on this section. And like I said, if you have any questions, feel free to stop me as we move along. Yes, ma'am?
I actually have a question for terms,
Mhm.
and it's not redlined. So,
Okay.
So if you're ready.
At the top, yes, ma'am.
Okay. So in B1, you have a statement that says eligible persons wishing to serve shall submit an application via the town's website to the town clerk requesting appointment to a term by the town council. All terms shall be for 2 years.
And I'm sorry, where were we located? I apologize.
It's on page 3 under terms.
3 under.
It's right after the authority section you just highlighted.
I got you right here. Okay.
Yeah, it's real. It's not.
Mhm.
It's not redlined. That's
Gotcha.
okay. Many of us attended some committee meetings over the last 2 weeks, and I interviewed or discussed the onboarding process and the application process with several different committee members. And the application process is a little confusing. The website's a little confusing. And this wording limits the town clerk to only accepting applications via the website. I know for certain there is at least 2 individuals that don't have computers or don't feel comfortable completing the application on the website and need assistance. So there's language in this document that might be the same but not limit you just to accepting only on the website, and that's on page, and it's a similar yes, I highlighted it. Committee appointment and recruitment, that's number 10 on page 14. It says, and this is it's about the same kind of thing. It says all interested applicants must complete an official town of Morrisville application found on the town's website. That's a very simple sentence. It could be repeated in the same section, but it gives you that flexibility to accept that application that can be found on the website, either manually or digitally.
Understood. And we can make those changes to this one. But this may help. I should have mentioned this at first. Staff does plan on doing a larger review of our advisory boards and committees to include a review of this policy, because we made various changes, but we've never actually sat down and had a discussion regarding the policy and allowed town council to provide that feedback on certain items like this. So in the next couple of months or in the future, we do plan on doing a more extensive review of all of these policies, or of all of the
right. And I
documents as a whole.
don't have comments in every section. It's just because I attended those meetings in the last 2 weeks that application process was discussed.
Gotcha.
So
Absolutely.
I kind of had a razor focus.
We can edit this, and we could
Yeah.
also maybe add some wording regarding accommodations, because I know I've reached out to you before to discuss accommodations to different
Yeah.
committees, where I'll assist in processing those applications. So we can wordsmith this to match what you're suggesting.
Just a little bit. Thank you. I appreciate your
Yes, ma'am.
flexibility. I don't think anybody has any additional comments about that.
Not at this time. Anything else, Councilmember Grimes-Johnson?
Not at this time. I have other comments, but they're in other sections, so thank you.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, since we know we have comments coming, I'll try and move through these quickly so we can address the questions. The next substantial change comes under term limits, specifically regarding the chair and the vice chair positions. As we know, town council does approve those proposed chair and vice chairs via resolution each year. The current policy states that any member appointed to the position of chair and vice chair consecutively may only serve a maximum of 2 terms per appointed office, meaning they could serve 2 years as chair, 2 years as vice chair, for a maximum total of 4 years. The problem that we often encountered, well, not often, but more so recently, is that we would have a committee where members serve 4 years in a chair or a vice chair position. When it came time for that committee to make the recommendation on the new chair or the vice chair, there were no other people or members interested in serving those positions. So we often had a committee where there were no people interested besides the current chair or the current vice chair. And so we were kind of set with a position where we had no clarification on. So we decided to add this exception stating that exception to term maximums can be made at town council discretion. And this would appear as an exception placed within that resolution that we submit to town council each year to say, hey, this individual or this committee doesn't have any members that would like to seek appointment. The current chair would like an exception to the term maximum, and we would list that, and town council can make that decision on the resolution at their discretion. Okay, we'll keep on scrolling to the next substantial change. Another administrative change that you may see are the distinction made between business and calendar days. Oftentimes, within the language, we simply listed 14 days. So there was often a question of whether this was business or calendar days. So we made those changes. You'll notice that also throughout the policy. The next major change that we made was related to the complaint communication, investigation, and resolution that town council recently added in June of 2022. Section 3 of this, well, I apologize, Section 4 of this area previously said that the town manager or designee will meet with the committee chair, assuming the complaint is not against the committee chair, and the staff liaison to discuss the complaint and to determine if it can be resolved at the staff level. We added this little caveat that assuming the complaint is not against the committee chair, but we never outlined what to do if it was against the committee chair. So we just added this sentence here to the end that stated if the complaint is against the committee chair, the town manager or designee will meet with the staff liaison and the lead department director. Once again, it's just an area that that needed some clarification.
Quick question on that. Would it make sense to maybe think about meeting with the vice chair in that case, or just some representation from the committee?
We could add that. Let me see.
As a perhaps. I mean, that,
we could look into adding that. We could put the committee chair and or vice chair, or the committee chair or vice chair, just to ensure that one or the other.
well, only if it's against the committee chair.
Understood. You're correct. I'm sorry. You're talking about the exception that we added. Correct.
So talk it over with your staff about whether or not that would be appropriate or not. But it seems like having a resident in that meeting might be helpful.
Gotcha. Sorry, I confused myself there for a second. I see what you're saying. The committee vice chair, since the chair wouldn't be available.
Mr. Mayor,
Chair.
if I could,
Please.
Understand what your question is, I would suggest we leave it as staff has recommended. That would give me or a designee the flexibility. I think you could, worst case, run into a situation where if that vice chair is the victim or there's something else going on there that they might not initially be comfortable speaking, I think letting the town manager or whoever might investigate that have that flexibility of who to talk to. That would likely include the vice chair, but then it doesn't obligate them to start there if it's not appropriate.
That sounds perfect.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, sir. Okay. And we will continue scrolling down. Like I said, a lot of these, there weren't any real broad amount of changes, but there were some that were necessary. Let's see. Here we go. The next substantial change did stem from the March 30th work session. It was the update from the annual work plan development where the advisory committees were developing their work plan once every year. The timeline there was just compressed. They didn't really have enough time to develop the work plan and then fully get into work on the work plan. So town council did agree to allow for a biennial work plan development. So this section was updated to read that advisory committees will develop and propose a biennial work plan for submission to town council for review and endorsement. Biennial work plans should be developed as soon as possible for each calendar year following the completion of the year-end report. Once again, the year-end report and town council review, those timelines remain the same. The only thing changing in this section is that they're going to develop the work plan based on a 2-year cycle versus a 1-year work cycle.
I don't like bi or semi. If we could just clarify and just say every 2 years, or just call it a 2-year work plan, that would be clearer for me.
Is that something everyone would? Yeah. Okay, and that's a simple change to make. Okay. Once again, you'll notice just those changes to clarify business days versus calendar days in 48 hours. We will continue. I believe there's one more change. Yes, the final changes that we had were related to the committee appointment and recruitment and the orientation schedules. As Town Council previously decided at their March 30th work session, we were going to reduce the number of recruitment cycles to 2 recruitment cycles per year. It previously was outlined that we'll have recruitment cycles taking place in the spring, summer, and fall, but we've changed this to read the summer and winter, which would be a July appointment cycle and a November appointment cycle, which has recently started.
Councilmember Scroggins-Johnson.
On page 14, under orientation and training, you have highlighted the new strategy for training of the committee members. So you've got recruitment, where it has my favorite, item number 2 has my favorite wording. All interested applicants must complete an official application. B, orientation and training, and C, non-appointed applicants. In item C, you state that applications will be maintained in an active status for 1 year following the initial receipt of the application for those applicants that are not appointed. However, I don't see any guidance about those that have been appointed and about them maintaining an active application in the system for consideration of reappointment. And maybe it's somewhere else in the document, but I think that has been some, it has caused some confusion of people that are sitting on the committee and actually appreciating how they can request reappointment versus request not to be reappointed.
Understood. I think the reason that it's listed as it is because those individuals that will be seeking reappointment, after 1 year, the application that they submitted to initially get appointed on would already have expired. So for that reappointment, they would have to reapply. We are kind of enhancing our outreach efforts to those members with expiring terms, whether it be contacting them via email, contacting them via phone. I just talked to Mayor Pro Tem Johnson about this during the break that, we're contacting them to say, hey, do you still want to serve on these committees? If not, let us know. We're trying to do that a little bit earlier in the process versus waiting till the very end of the process. And then we're like, well, did we contact this member or did we contact that? So within the next week or so, those members with expiring terms out to March of 2024, they should have been contacted and we should have confirmation of whether or not they want to proceed
and I think that is a really good step forward because as we look at the new cycle, for winter, that will be helpful. However, should we not have, maybe not as detailed as you've just described, but some guidance on requesting reappointment or something about reappointments will be considered by council if an application is submitted near the time of the expiry of the term or something like that.
So just I guess just the section outlining the guidelines for those with expiring terms with that.
Yeah.
How they should proceed. Okay.
Yeah. Perfect. So however you want to, bring that up a little bit. So what do everybody else okay with that?
Yeah, that was a concern in a couple of the committees, the
right.
seeking reappointment.
It's confusing. Yeah. Thank you. That's all.
Okay, and I'm going to scroll back up just a little bit because there was one change here. Under the committee appointment and recruitment, Section 5 does state that all terms of office are for 2 calendar years effective from the date of appointment. If you recall, on March 30th work session, we discussed the need to align those terms that had kind of gotten out of the typical appointment cycle. We had term expirations taking place at 5 to 6 different times throughout the year. So to align those cycles, some of the appointments, as you may have noticed on your previous resolution, some of the appointments were for 1 or 2 months less than the 2 calendar years, and some are for 1 or 2 months longer than the 2 calendar years. So this is something that's it's a practice that we've already established, but We just need to update the policy to give you the discretion to adjust those appointment terms. So this is one that most likely would only come into use over the next 2 to 3 years as we align those appointment cycles. But it could also be utilized in the future at town council discretion. But where was I at? Let's see here. May have scrolled ahead just a little bit too far. Yeah, and we also touched on this a little bit. For the orientation and training, it previously stated that the town clerk will provide orientation for all committee members and staff. We did update this to read that the town clerk will provide mandatory orientation for all committee members and interested town staff in August and in January. We previously facilitated one training that took place in January or February. While we did have some members that attended, the attendance wasn't as high as we wished it would have been. So what we did was we decided to have 2 appointment cycles that are going to, 2 orientation cycles that are going to come up immediately following the appointment cycle. That way you have freshly appointed members. They can come attend the orientation prior to their first committee meeting, and then they can go out to the committees and perform properly and be proper members of the committee. Just this section, we deleted this. We deleted the annual training section because we already addressed it in the previous section. And I believe those are the only substantial changes that have been made to the policy. So I welcome any questions from council, or if you have any questions regarding how we came to these decisions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Councilmember Rao.
I wanted to say that I think that the joint meetings that we had were very productive and helpful, and I hope that we can do more of those over the next 2 years if possible. I just felt like it was just wonderful to learn, to meet these committee members, to get to know them, but most importantly, learn about their work plans, and I just felt like some was me. I don't know how you all feel, but I thought it was great, so just wanted to give that feedback.
I agree. I agree.
Good. So there was, I think, maybe one major change, the adding of a section about expiring terms and how that will be addressed. So do you want to just see this in 2 weeks with staff changes that were recommended tonight? Okay. Town Clerk Smith, thank you very much. Anything else on this item?
No, sir. That is it. Thank you much for your time.
Will you be able to make those changes, bring them back in 2 weeks, or should we expect that later?
Oh, no, you could definitely expect those changes in 2 weeks. I don't
Okay.
think they're not too much.
Great. Thank you very much. Good job. That's a lot to go through, many pages.
Sure.
Okay. So now we're at future meetings, events, and community engagement opportunities. I'll just get through this. As was mentioned, Green Day is on November 4th. All of these are on our website. One thing I'd like to add, join the Morrisville Police Department on October 14th at Morrisville Community Park, 1520 Morrisville Parkway, for a charity bike ride benefiting Special Olympics of North Carolina. When I say bike, that's motorcycle, actually. Registration will begin at 8 a.m. and kickstands will go up at 9 a.m. to begin the ride. You can view the website for more information and to register. Join us on Saturday, October 21st for Trick or Treat the Trail, also at Morrisville Community Park. Children of all ages can wear their costumes and walk along the decorated trail, trick-or-treating for candy and other treats. The 2023 event will be done slightly differently than in years past. Attendees will be asked to register in advance for one of 2 available times, either 1 to 3 p.m. or from 4 till 6 p.m. So please visit the event webpage for more details and to register. And keep your eyes peeled, as you may even spot some staff or council members in costume this year. Join us for the 2023 Diwali Festival on Saturday, October 28th from 5 until 8 p.m. at Cedar Fork District Park. The celebration includes hands-on activities, music, food, and fireworks. Learn more at the town's event page. And the Western White Farmers Market offers healthy and fresh food and goods from small and local businesses from 8 a.m. till noon every Saturday at the Healthy Food Hub, which is right next to the Dragonfly Disc Golf Course. For a full listing of events, please see the town calendar at www.morrisvillenc.gov. While there, sign up for our Next Week in Morrisville email, which comes out every Friday, and also download Morrisville Central on your Android or iPhone to have all this info at your fingertips. Also, you just got the Morrisville Connection in your mailboxes today, which has a nice calendar of events right on the back, along with lots of other important info. So please don't put that into the recycle bin. Go ahead and read through that. At this time, we're at council member comments, and I'll recognize Council Member Scroggins Johnson, followed by myself.
I would just like to say that we have had a great recognition with Fire Safety Day on last Saturday and National Night Out. So there's been some great public safety awareness demonstrations and a lot of volunteers helping keep our towns safe. So I really congratulate both the police and the fire department for having such successful events. That's all.
Great, thank you. It'll be Councilmember Robati after me. I want to say a big thank you to our staff, our Parks and Rec Committee, and countless community volunteers and supporters from the region for making today's Dragonfly Disc Golf Course ribbon cutting possible. It is a great sport, ideally suited for our community who loves to enjoy the outdoors, and is a great use of space, which is so convenient. I look forward to making even more friends as we introduce the sport to more of our residents. I'd like to another item, I'd like to thank you to the India Heritage Foundation for inviting the council to a celebration of Mahatma Gandhi's birthday this past Sunday. There was singing and performances at the location of his statue at the Marbles Children's Museum, and it was really a nice way to spend some time downtown. Two of his famous quotes, which I place a great deal of value, are, "The best way to find yourself is to lose yourself in the service of others." And another quote is, "Freedom is not worth having if it does not include the freedom to make mistakes." Now, this one I feel is very important. If we as a town are to truly embrace our adopted value of innovation, we might not get it perfect every time, but by trying and moving forward, we do keep making things better. With that in mind, I look forward to our continuing discussions with Marbles regarding the satellite location in our town center core and the efforts to perhaps bring the statue of Gandhi itself to a location in Morrisville. It is Election Day in Cary today, and I want to thank everyone there and those here in Morrisville who have put themselves on the ballot, and for all the volunteers who are helping the candidates share their messages for a better and brighter future for our region. Now I'd like to recognize Councilmember Rabati, followed by Councilmember Fender.
Thank you, Mayor. I also attended the Heritage India Association of North Carolina's 154th birthday of Mahatma Gandhi, and I had never seen the statue before, and it is amazing. And I would really encourage anyone who has never seen it at the Marbles Museum to go and see it. The mayor and I and Councilmember Rao were all honored to be asked to place garlands on the statue as part of the ceremony, and the performances, as always, were just top-notch, and the kids are so cute. That was just a really good time, and I so look forward now to having this statue in Morrisville in a way that I didn't before, now that I've seen it.
Thank you. Councilmember Fender, followed by Councilmember Rao.
Thank you, Mayor. I just have a short comment. I wanted to thank Councilmember Garamella for reading the Domestic Violence Awareness Proclamation. It's a topic that is near my heart as being a survivor. It's a proclamation that I've read the past 2 years. However, I asked Councilmember Garamella to read it tonight because in general, this is an area that the advocates are usually women, and it needs to be an area that is fought by both men and women for awareness and to eliminate domestic violence. So it shouldn't be just women fighting for this issue. It needs to be all of us. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, Councilmember Rao, followed by Mayor Pro Tem Johnson.
Well, just the first thing I want to say is today's my mom's birthday. She's 76, and I just wanted to know she's watching. I love you, and I love the council and the staff, but I wish I was with you. But her birthday gift was that she got to spend time with her grandson, who came from Mrs. Gate already. So happy birthday, Mom. Gandhi Jayati was great. I want to thank the participators, Restaurant Week participants, and November 9th is the Connected Triangle Plus Summit. So send everyone information, get registered for that. It's at the Line Convention Center, and also our Smart City Advisory Committee. And I want to thank Secretary Jim Weaver for happening to Morrisville last Friday was technology secretary to meet with minority tech companies to celebrate Minority Enterprise Week. It was a very successful meeting. So I want to end my comments with a positive and then kind of a sad note. But first, for the council and all of us around, we know we have VAPS in Morrisville. But on Sunday, they opened up the second largest Hindu temple in the world, Akshardham. And it's just amazing. 12,100 volunteers, 4.7 million hours, people from Morrisville, VAPS, involved in this project. And it was opened up by Mahatma, and their mantra is Bhakti, which is devotion, and Seva, which is selfless service. So it's the largest Hindu temple in the Western Hemisphere, and it's in Robbinsville, New Jersey. So I want to congratulate BAPS, Morrisville, and all around the state and country, and I hope that our council, all of us, either together, could go visit, because I think that would be a really exciting thing for us to do. So congratulations. And then I just want to say to the Jewish community of Morrisville, the Triangle, and the state, we're just very sad for what's going on in Israel. And we just pray for the peace and the tragedy that's befallen their nation. I've spoken to Jewish residents, not only in Morrisville, but around the area who have parents and grandparents in Israel. And it's just literally frightening to see the images we're seeing, children being killed in front of their parents, grandparents being kidnapped and killed. So just want to throw that out there and just tell anybody that, we're sorry and we pray for your families and we pray for a strong Israel to get through this terrible crisis. And, that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Mayor Pro Tem Johnson, followed by Councilmember Garamella.
So the only comments I have tonight are to recognize and acknowledge our new town manager, Brandon Zudema, on his first town council meeting, his official town council meeting. So congratulations and thank you.
Thank you. So far, so good.
Yes, so far so good. And also for recognize and congratulate our new deputy town manager, Giselle Rodriguez. So thank you both very much. And yeah.
Councilmember Garamella, please.
She stole my thunder. And again, Brandon and Giselle, congratulations, much deserved. And we are looking forward for all the good to come. And I just want to acknowledge back Councilmember Fender. I usually don't read proclamations, and TJ keeps asking me, and I said, no, I'm fine. And when she said it, I said, sure. And in reality, that is true, because I'm seeing a lot of domestic violence increase in the Indian American community too. And alcohol is a big thing that is causing it. And people think, unlike India, you can just get away and do it. And it affects families, immigration, and all kinds of things that come along with it. I think to create awareness is very, very important. And otherwise, you just don't know. But I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, unfortunately, so much happens behind closed doors.
But also, I want to thank Councilmember Fender for having the courage to talk about this since she's been on the council.
Yep. Really appreciate that. Yes, it's been very important. And our communications department has been really good about sharing out information like that. And we heard from Interact, and Kieran is also a very large player in this space, especially for our community. So possibility of our social media also highlighting that fact would also be helpful to make sure our community is aware. We really appreciate bringing all these proclamation opportunities to us to help our community. At this time, I'd like to recognize Town Manager Zudema in case there's any staff comments.
I do. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. First, although it's been said, I would also like to recognize Giselle and just say, many of you have particularly seen her over the last probably 18 months in her role as the assistant manager. But I would say you don't see a percentage of who she is, what she can accomplish, how she treats staff, all those things that are really critical. So I would like to thank her for giving me the easiest decision of my professional career to appoint her as deputy town manager. So thank you for that. You're welcome. I also want to mention that you will get an email from me at some point this week to start discussions around retreat and the 2024 schedule. So just take a look at that, please, when it comes out. I'll make sure I remind you that it's out, and just looking for feedback. So when we come back in November to really in person start that conversation, we can have a leg up on that and maybe have made some decisions, or at least have a point towards the decisions to let you know when that comes out. And then lastly, as you leave, please check your mailboxes. You have a couple things in there related to our new Morrisville website. So for the community, again, as a reminder, we are now www.morrisvillenc.gov. Thank you.
Please check our mailboxes on the way out. And at this time, if there's nothing else for the good of the order, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Motion is second. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, that carries 7-0. Thank you for watching this meeting of the Morrisville Town Council. Have a great day.